All right. What's up, beautiful people? We appreciate you joining us today on another episode of Dope People. I'm your host, Jacoby Holland. We have a dope episode today. It's really going to challenge my language skills here. I'm going to do my best, but you guys hold me accountable if I get this right. So today we have May Fuion. Damn it. I was practicing this whole time. All right, May Fuimaono-poe, who is a nurse practitioner, and she's also a founder of Cannabis app. Today, we're going to be talking about the craziness of starting a company, and I'm really excited because we're talking about it from the perspective of someone from the Pacific Islands. So we're in the building today. We're excited for this one, and we're happy to have you guys here.
What's up, Revel fam? We back in the building. Another Wednesday, 7 p.m. Like, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on YouTube. We love you. We're glad to be back here today with you all. We have a very exciting episode, as Jacoby just went over. But first, let's check in with the lovely Lulu.
What's up, Lou?
Hey everyone. I am recovering a little bit from Hall of Flowers. Was in Santa Rosa last week. Really awesome to connect back with the cannabis community. Came back on Friday and thought of you, Jacoby. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, is this what Jacoby and introverts feel like when they're around that many people?
When I'm just done, completely done talking.
I felt you. I was channeling you. I also want to say congratulations, Jacoby, on your engagement, ladies. He is off the market. I hear all hearts breaking around the world, but he but he did it. He did it really, really well and really, really smooth. So congratulations. You
Thank you.
are, yeah, little brother is engaged. This is amazing.
Yep, just building another relationship into forever. Like my Revel fam is another relationship because you guys really, really helped me pull that one off. So
And you worked real hard, but I think you strategically planned it so you'd be in Mexico when I was out of Mexico.
I know. Just the way it happens. I was like, God, you've been telling me to come for literally like 12 months.
All of COVID.
Yeah. Hey, but we made it happen.
But it was really nice to see the cannabis community getting together in Northern California. Hall of Flowers did a really beautiful job. And it was really nice to be hosted by our other partners, Flower Hire. So shout out to Flower Hire and Hall of Flowers. It was a really nice landing right back into the cannabis space. So, but now we're getting ready for New York, and really interested to hear about a state that we don't really hear a lot about, which is Hawaii and the cannabis program there. So I met this woman, a magical woman in Hawaii in 2018.
We only invite magical women. Like,
it's true.
If you're not a magical woman, it's hard to get on the show.
But May is literally an inspiration and one of the leaders in the Hawaii medical cannabis space. So May, we would love to invite you to join and tell us your story.
Hi, May.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, thank you. Your background far exceeds all three of ours. It looks beautiful.
I know. I'm just like I'm on my my lanai, my little front porch. So it has good lighting.
It's beautiful lighting.
Light flex. Okay.
Right?
Well, it's really awesome to have you on here. Like Lulu was saying, like we don't really talk about Hawaii that much from us on the mainland over here, which is probably a shame. We're over here on the East Coast living in our own bubbles. sometimes. And I'm really kind of excited to hear about your journey and how you're able to build. Like you were a first. I think of those people that when like YouTube videos come up and they're always like first. Like you did a lot of things first. You did a lot of really cool stuff. So I want to get into that and just understanding like the craziness of you entrepreneurs and like what goes through your brain and some of the decisions you got to make. So let's kick it off. You first started the clinic, right? So tell me first
Yeah.
about like what it took to open the clinic, what makes you guys different, just a little background on the clinic.
Yeah, I mean, so you know, I've always wanted to work in the cannabis space, but in cannabis in the healthcare. I've done a lot in cannabis. I've been into distribution. I've grown for medical cannabis dispensaries while I was in California, but I really wanted to use my license. I really wanted to do it in as a nurse practitioner. So basically in 2016, drug policy forum and some of the other activists here in Hawaii passed legislation, lobbied for legislation to allow nurse practitioners to practice, because until then it was just medical doctors.
Mm.
So in July, Governor Ige he signed the bill, and I opened 6 weeks later. One of the things where I think that nurses and nurse practitioners specifically are different than our physician colleagues is that we have such a huge foundation in educating patients and empowering patients. And I feel like with cannabis, that's one of the hugest things that we can do is education and empowerment, because it's really so individualized, that it's really best if people kind of, you give them guidance, but they, self titrate
Yeah,
to
totally. And
find a dose, right?
can you define titrate for our audience quickly?
Yeah, so titration is, so you hear a lot about like go go start low and slow, but it's like what does that actually mean? Like what does that look like? For some people, a low dose is 2 milligrams. For other people, a low dose is 20 milligrams. So it's like this huge range. So titration actually means to start at a defined low dose. So in my clinic we start at 2 milligrams, and then you would just increase by 1 milligram incrementally. So kind of teaching people how to do that. So that's the goal of titration, is slowly increasing until you reach like we call it the sweet spot. Everybody has that like perfect with whatever they're using, everybody has a perfect dose.
Oh yeah, that's one of the things Lulu will make fun of me for. Like once I'm done with people, I know exactly how much I'm going to take of my edibles, and then I'm going to sit and play Xbox and not want to talk to anybody for hours. And I got that dialed in. I know exactly what I'm going to do. But it's interesting because I came from
Right.
Colorado. Yeah, I came from Colorado when I got to New York like 6, 7 years ago, and I buy like a Rice Krispie treat, and I'm like, how strong is this? They're like, it'll get you pretty high. And I was like, no. I've crossed over. I can't go back to just like rolling the dice on what type of high I'm gonna get. Like I've come too far.
Absolutely. No, same. Like I know exactly what like works perfectly for me, and over that I start to get weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you had actually quite a vast experience in cannabis before you even kind of shot your shot for the clinic. So can you
Yes.
explain actually before that stuff happened? Like you grew up, I believe, in Missouri, right? Or that's where your
Yes.
family ended up moving to when you were young or something like that. Um, I don't
Yeah.
think that Missouri was extremely liberal with cannabis back in the day. So, like, how did you get into all of this, and what was your journey to California and then back to Hawaii?
Yeah, so I'm Samoan. My last name is Fuimaono. So my family actually like led this revolution of Latter-day Saints of Mormons from Samoa to Missouri. So that was the goal. This was my great grandfather's quest. He started it. It was fulfilled by my grandfather and
Wow.
his siblings and their descendants. So they went from Samoa, from Mapsangafo, which is like a Mormon village in Samoa that my family helped to found, to here to Laie. So if anybody knows about Laie, I'm sure you know about Kahuku football. It's the high school program that produces the most NFL players in the nation. And so
Wow.
that's the high school my dad went to. And then my family specifically was a little different in that most of my family went to Los Angeles, but we actually went to the Bay Area. We were there for a decade because of my grandmother's sister. So we are part of the Bay Area Samoa collective. My uncle founded Flag Day there, and then from
What's Flag
California,
Day? I'm
they went
sorry.
with a group of. I'm sorry.
What did your uncle found?
So Flag Day is like a Samoan Independence festival that it's like a Samoan holiday, and so he founded the one in San Francisco, and it's still like going to this day. Um,
You got a
and
lot of
and and
dopeness
they
in your
have them.
family. You got bunch of
Right?
dopeness in
No,
your
that's
family before you
exactly
even
like
started.
started. Yeah, no, I just like followed in their
You were destined.
footsteps.
Yeah.
Yes. Um, so their whole entire goal was to move to Missouri, right? Because if you are Mormon, part of Mormonism is that Missouri is, where the second coming is going to happen and where the New Jerusalem will be. So it's part of this prophecy from Joseph Smith. And so, that's why my family moved all the way from Samoa, South Pacific, to Missouri. Because I know it sounds weird. Like, wait, there's a bunch of Samoans in Missouri. And yeah, like if you look at the census, I think the last census there was over 10,000, which is pretty big considering we're like a small population worldwide.
Is it
Um,
like Dominicans in New
so
York? Where there's, like, more Dominicans in
yes.
New York? I know Peter's
Yeah.
laughing at me for
So
that one.
right? No, legit. There's so it's more I would say yeah, very similar. So the biggest Samoan population outside of Samoa is actually in Auckland, New Zealand. But I would say that Missouri is like it's pretty close. There's a lot of us.
Okay.
So that's how, all these Polynesians like ended up there was really so if you hear someone who's like Samoan, Tongan, Hawaiian say that they're from Missouri, probably 9 out of 10 their family's Mormon. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, so I grew up in this super close knit Samoan Mormon community in the middle of nowhere, middle of Missouri, and started, using weed as, when I was like high school, not too much.
Well,
Um,
hold on. I imagine that is pretty radical. Talk to me about the
it
2
was super
culture
radical.
you're talking about 2 different cultures here, so I want you to break it down from both cultures. Samoan, how, like, integrated is cannabis plant medicine? And then Latter-day Saints world, that sounds pretty radical, probably like a straight no-no. Like, how are you experimenting this early, and, like, what were those 2 cultures thinking about this?
Yeah, I of course was, trying it with my friends and they essentially, like, my parents, my aunties, my uncles, the leadership of my church was all like, you know, this is wrong, because at that time it was really, looked on as the same way, like, alcohol, tobacco, um, seen as like a drug, right? But since then, the Mormon Church actually changed its stance on cannabis. I want to say probably 4 years ago, um, and so they were actually a big part of helping medical cannabis pass in Salt Lake, in Utah. And as far as my family, so before I even opened my clinic, my father passed away, so I went to all of his siblings and like essentially asked permission,
Hmm.
like, this is what I want to do, even though I'm like grown. You're never grown.
When you come from a family of dopeness, it sounds like you got to go get like the dope approval, literally from
you
everybody.
have to get you have to get like literally like signed off. So I went to like my our matriarch, who's my auntie. She's now like the leader of my family. She's the oldest person alive in my family, and just like really explain to her what I was doing. And then my uncle, her husband, was like, "Oh, I know all about that because his family is actually super famous for growing cannabis in Samoa." And when his grandson was in Samoa on a mission, his family got busted for growing cannabis. So,
Oh wow, more family
right?
stories. This is crazy.
Yeah, so like really just asking them permission and like getting that like approval, and going through, they're all like very traditional still. It's like
So was there any
i
objection?
i think so, a little bit, because they were more like scared that I wasn't going to be safe.
Safe how?
Like
Like
it
what
was
was safe to
like
them?
like, oh, they're like, like, is this drug dealers, are they gonna come rob you, like that kind of like that, more like that type of
Mhm.
concern, like, who's gonna be with you in your clinic, is your husband gonna be there, who's gonna like, more like who's gonna protect you, and not really that like understanding of like that cannabis is actually really safe and the culture is very safe. So I think just some of that, like a little bit of that misunderstanding, and so we just like hashed it out and I got their blessing.
So it was about the just the safety of going into like something that had historically been kind of violent, pretty violent. It was that part. It wasn't
Yep.
like the idea of like, hey, I'm gonna be cultivating or like selling this plant that has been like shunned for so long. That second part didn't like come up at all.
Yeah, and I'm mainly like a gatekeeper, and so that was one of the things too, because I was like, I'm not gonna touch it. I'm not gonna be selling it. I'm gonna be more just like helping people gain access and use it. Um, and I also think that they were like, you've worked so hard. You like have this amazing job at this super prestigious hospital. Like, why are you doing this?
Okay. So
So I
let's
think there was
le-
that too.
yeah, yeah, totally. Um so let's talk about why on earth would you do this when you had such a prestigious great job? And talk to me about like those first couple days of like, had you ever started a business? Like you had to make a business plan or something? Did you have to like go get licensed in Hawaii? Like give me those first like 100 days, like what you had to do and why you gave up that prestigious career.
Yeah, so I knew that from the beginning I didn't want investors. I wanted to do it by myself. Um and for a lot of reasons, but for myself personally, I didn't want to owe anybody money. I didn't want to, and I also didn't want to have to like have my business be a certain way. I wanted to be able to kind of fail gracefully and fail by myself if I was going to. um so me and my husband had been saving to buy a house here in Hawaii. So I was like, we have this little nest egg. It wasn't even huge. It was like 10 grand. And so I was like, I want to take this and I want to open my business. So it was like a couple of steps. So starting, we got like our local business license here in Hawaii. That was pretty simple. And then with like the federal government, we got like our EIN. So we got like our tax identification number. I was super lucky because one of my best friends is an attorney, and she had represented a couple of cannabis companies that um, got in trouble in California. So she was basically like, this is what everyone gets in trouble for. Don't do this. Shout out to
That's a plug.
Jenny. Love
Shout out to
you.
Jenny. All right. Yeah, that's important. That's a good
Yes.
friend.
Yeah. So she was essentially like, this is how people get in trouble. So right away we had like attorneys, and then I hired an accountant to just kind of help, like basically to start it. And of course I started it wrong. I started like as an LLC instead of an S corp. Like made like mistakes, but
I've made those mistakes too.
I right? But I stayed working at my job for a full year
Mhm.
before I left, and so I think a lot of people are like, oh, I totally thought that I was gonna open my clinic and be booked out every day, like
Of course.
right, like
Of course.
of course that's like you open your doors and everyone's just gonna see how amazing you are and like the floodgates are open. But yeah, no. So I paid the bills for my clinic with my regular job, um, solidly for the first 8 months.
Can I
My
how did
clinic
that go with
didn't.
how did that go with your husband? Because you were already like you already took that little bit of capital, put it here. Now you're putting your
Yeah.
salary. Like, what was going on at home?
Yeah, so I mean, like, luckily I have an amazing husband, and amazing partner, and an amazing daughter, and so they were super supportive. But like I couldn't have done it without them, and without my family. So I have this huge extended family in Oahu, and so my first employees were my family. Like literally, it was me, my husband, and then my nephew actually moved from New York. He's back in New York. He came here and lived with me for a year, and like helped me set up my clinic, set up my front desk. We started in a pop-up. So we didn't even really have like we were like a pop-up location. We had hours, like 2 days a week. So I worked my normal job 5 days a week and then did 2 days a week at my clinic.
Got you. Got you. Okay. Yeah, the family just that keeps on giving. My goodness. They sound
Yeah.
amazing. So
No, for sure.
uh talk to me about like how you were able to market your services to people, right? Because you kind of thought, I'll
Ooh.
just open it up and then like people will come. And then it sounds like you're kind of like rudely awakened to like, oh, I gotta like get people here. So what are like those first couple things that you were doing that maybe weren't working, or things that you learned that started to work for you?
Yeah, and I think like instantly I figured out like cuz I was like, "Oh, I'm just going to like do Facebook ads. I'm going to do Google ads. I'm just going to do like all these things that they tell you in normal business, right?" Um so of course I immediately got banned from Facebook. Immediately got banned and deleted from Instagram.
Been there before as
And
well.
same with
Mhm.
Google.
Mhm.
And like I'm not even selling cannabis. Like I'm not even selling the plant. Um so that was like this huge rude awakening into where I was like, great, like I'm banned from all these platforms right now. Before it was like even cool to get banned. Before getting banned was like this mark of honor. I feel like everyone in cannabis, like we've been getting banned for the past decade.
Yeah,
Like,
like
yeah,
back
we
then
get
it just
it.
sucked. It
Um,
just sucked. There's nothing cool about it.
yeah, it just no, it just sucks. And so I was like, okay, I'm getting constantly banned. What's next? Um, so then I was like, let me try radio. So there hadn't been like any like cannabis commercials in Hawaii on for iHeart, like the iHeart radio station locally. And I knew that one of the DJs, Hawaiian Ryan, was like a super proud cannabis connoisseur. Um, so I like basically went to them and was like, "Hey, can I work with you?" And they were like, "Absolutely." So we had like the first like cannabis, like commercials on air. Um, on like 93.9, which is like our big radio station out here. They like got me on all their shows. And so of course I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm on radio. This is the first. It's like super revolutionary. The floodgates are gonna open, right? I was
Of
like,
course.
this is it. So it brought in some people, but not like a ton, right?
Mhm.
Even though they're like everyone listens to radio, but that doesn't necessarily transfer over to sales. So
Can
like
can I ask you real
it
quick? Um,
yeah,
I imagine prior to this, you had never made a radio ad in your life. So, like, did you, like, write
right.
the script yourself? Did you perform it yourself? Like, how did you do this thing that you've never done before and then send it to thousands of people on the radio?
Yeah, no. So like luckily, shout out to Hawaiian Ryan. He's one of my good friends. He totally did everything. It was amazing. Their team was amazing. They like handled it for me, and because otherwise I would have just been like
Yeah, I wanna know where to
um
start. Shout out to Hawaiian Ryan.
yeah, no. Yeah, so and he's amazing. He has like a really popular morning show out here. So yeah, so they and then of course they would have me on like their morning show and I would like be their guest and but it just didn't like translate so I did it for a year. Did radio ads for a year. But it didn't totally get me the action. What really got me sales, and this is because I'm in Hawaii, like I'm on literally an island, um, was we started doing events. So like if you were having an event, whether it was cannabis centric or not, I would just show up with like my table, my pop tent, and just give out information. So we did everything from um, AIDS Walk to the Epilepsy Foundation. to the Ahi, the Hawaii Invitational, which is one of our cannabis cups, to Hawaii Cannabis Expo. Like, you name it, if a person could benefit from cannabis who was in your circle, we showed up. And then I also like hit up all of the professional organizations and asked if I could present about cannabis. So I presented at like Queens Medical Center, Straub, the big cannabis nursing conference. So I just started like really working on building relationships with other healthcare providers and other people who could benefit from cannabis. And then it just kind of snowballed from there.
I like that a lot because a lot of people, I mean, like you said, an island is a bit different. So maybe you were forced to do this, but a lot of people out here will stay inside of the cannabis circle, right? And it's like people going into an echo
Yeah.
chamber in their communities to talk about things and try to market things. And what you did, what it sounds like, is you found people that had like overlapping cannabis consumers, right? Like people in, this group, that there's going to be some people that need marijuana in their lives in this group and in this group and in this group. And you just catch all the people that overlap. And I think that is surprisingly more rare to like some of the entrepreneurs I talk to out here. Of like, dude, get out of the cannabis world. Like, go. There's weed smokers in all of the other worlds.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean I feel like the cannabis space, it's like I know that they're my friends. They're gonna come to me. They're gonna tell their friends about me. So yeah, we just like we were probably doing 2 to 3 events a month every month for a solid probably 2 to 3 years. So
Wow.
yeah,
All right. So
and
it
and then
started to
we
work.
start. Yeah, it worked.
Okay. All right. So we've hit, year 2 at this point, right? Like you finally it's kind of clicked. You're not paying for your job with your salary directly. It's starting to make its own revenue. It's growing. People know about you in the area. Um but then at some point after that, you decided to start another thing, right? So talk to me about what at what point in the first business did you decide to do the other thing? And then tell me what the other thing is.
Yeah, so you know, I didn't even realize that like entrepreneurs solve problems. But I saw this consistent problem in the cannabis space, and the consistent problem was dosing. Um, any of us could go on like Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, TikTok, and find a story about somebody who took too much cannabis, typically too much THC, and had a bad experience. And so after seeing like all these people coming to me and being like, yeah, but I won't do edibles because this happened. And I mean, like, if I had $1 for every brownie story, I could like have a down payment for a house because it's the most famous story,
Yep. I got a couple
ironically,
too.
but it's,
Mhm.
yeah, it's brownies are dangerous. Don't do it. If somebody offers you a brownie, just be like, I'm good, thank you. Um, so so that's kind of like where the problem started. So we started filming videos. We started like making videos and making like little pamphlets for our patients on like how to titrate, how to dose. And then I got invited to the Ahi. So the Ahi is the All Hawaii Invitational. So it's like our local Emerald Cup. Um, but it's like it's very small. It's hence the All Hawaii Invitational. So it's invite only. And it's all of Hawaii's growers typically versus mainland growers. So we go head to head against, people from, Oregon, California, Washington. There's been people from New York there. So kind of, all over the United States, they come together for this like all day type festival. So I'm there with, my good friends, my nephew. We meet this guy, Mo, and his friend has never been to a cannabis competition, has no idea
Oh no.
really
Oh
what
no.
he's
Mo.
gotten himself into.
Oh Mo.
And I'm like, so, we end up, me, Mo, my nephew, loading his poor friend into the car, rolling down the windows because he's miserable. He's like spinning, he's nauseous, he feels horrible. He ends up like throwing up, passing out for like 6 hours, right? Um, so like once we get him settled, Mo's back at my table, and I'm just like, oh man, your poor friend. Like, if he would have just like maybe chilled a little on like whatever, mainly dabs, he would probably be cool. And then, that evolves into like, what do you do? And he's like, oh, I make apps. And I was like, oh, and he's like, I told him what I did. And I was like, I've been wanting to do a dosing app. And that's like where
Ah.
it all started.
That
Because
makes a
I was
ton of
like, look
sense.
at your poor friend.
Okay. All right. And so then you're like, I want to do this dosing app because look, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You had never built an
Yeah.
app before or an app business. Um, Talk to me about the first like 100 days there. Like that's a completely different undertaking.
It's a completely different world. Um, so I did it with Mo and Philippe. They're amazing. So they had like their business together. They were business partners, and they're essentially, like, hey, we can do this. It's going to be 10 grand. It'll take us, 6 months. We got it, right? And then we start, and it's like, oh, wait a second. So we start, we're building it. And as we're kind of like mid build, Mo and Philippe both got hired by Google. So my entire team is
Damn.
like, essentially, we have this great harmony. We're like almost there. Mo gets hired by Google, moves to San Francisco. Felipe gets hired by Google and moves to Germany. And so I'm like, ah.
Wow.
So we finish it, like, but it's not like, it doesn't have all the features that I want, right? And Mo and Felipe are no longer there to like update it, tweak it, help with it. So I have, and Apple rejected us. So I have an app that's on Google Play, but it's not like exactly what I want, right? Um, so then I spend essentially the next 6 months just researching, searching for another partner to work with. Um, and I found my partner that I work with now, and they're actually based out in New York. I was just in New York with them a couple of months ago. Um, and so we've spent the past like 2 years, like really finishing it, but also making it to where you can use it not only for cannabis, but really for any substance that requires titration.
I have questions, but
So
Lulu, it seems like you wanted to ask something. We can't hear you. Hold on. Let's see here. There you go.
Am I unmuted now? Can
Yeah.
I speak? So
Yeah.
I jumped on because that's how Jacoby and I actually met. Well, we both had a software that we were making for the cannabis space, and that's how we connected. So it wasn't our software things didn't pan out, but we, are partners for this education platform. And I think we had a laugh, May, when we talked about, and Jacoby's in the same space. We help groups design apps, but someone comes up. I feel like sometimes we're like the new doctors. Instead of someone going, hey, so, I have this thing on my body. It's like, hey, I have this idea. It's going to be great. How much is going to be? Like, it's going to take you what, 2 months and maybe like $5,000. And you're just like, whoa, like it's really, really complicated sometimes, depending on how, robust you want things to be. And I'm just super proud of you, May, for sticking it through and going through this normal process of these tech entrepreneurs, because everything you're talking about is so commonplace, and just really proud that you guys weathered the storm, and we're at a
It's never
place
done.
now where
It's
yeah,
never
it's never
done.
done.
Mm-mm.
And Apple just opened up the ability to accept apps. So like, you guys did it. You waited,
We did
you had
it.
patience, you did it. So good job, girl.
Yeah, and we our beta will be done probably in the next 10. Like, I just saw a little flash of my beta. Like, they're like, we're just doing tweaks of our beta, and then we're gonna do a full launch at the beginning of the year. So,
So,
whew.
well, that's amazing.
Apps
Shout out
are
to
hard.
you. Shout out to you. Apps are hard. Can you started to talk about, it really applies to much more than cannabis. It's really like anything that probably alters,
Does.
I don't know, your state, or like requires you to like take it slow. Can you talk about what are
Yeah.
some of those other things, and like how does the app work to help with that?
Yeah, so essentially, so I'll focus on cannabis first, and then I can say kind of what we have in mind for the future. So, as we all know, for cannabis dosing, it is incredibly specific. There is no one size fits all, and weight means nothing in cannabis. I have like giant, 280-pound ex-UH linebackers who will just take, you know, 2 milligrams of cannabis and be fine. And then I have little, adorable, fragile looking 90-pound aunties who like 20 milligrams of THC is their jam. So what our app does is essentially you sign in, you choose the symptoms that you're wanting to kind of track. So, like, I'll just say I'm the user. I want to use it for low back pain. And then, I would choose low back pain. And then one of the issues that I've found with cannabis and with cannabis oils specifically is that there's no standardization. It's really hard because it'll be like, oh, this bottle has 1,000 milligrams. How much of this 1,000 milligram bottle do I take? Um, so you put it into a calculator, and the calculator essentially figures out your dose. And then it asks you pre and post questions for whatever you're trying to work on. So we went with the most common symptoms that cannabis helps. So kind of pain, sleep, anxiety. Those are the three that we've started with. So, for low back pain, it'll be like Monday, this is day 1, you're going to take 1 milligram, you're going to rate your pain before and rate your pain after. Day 2, you're going to do 2 milligrams, you're going to rate your pain before, rate your pain after. And it goes along with how long it takes THC to metabolize. So it has like all of these, like set alarms, because we know how fast or slow THC metabolizes depending on what method you're using. And so those are kind of built into the app, right? And so that's essentially, and then it gives you these beautiful graphs to really help. And then, like, So say for someone who's more experienced like myself, um, and I'm, I have a new flower and I want to see if it helps my creativity. I can use it for that. So it's for like inexperienced users, but it's also for experienced users who want to specifically, like hack a certain symptom. Because I know there's like, for me personally, there's certain strains that make me feel creative. There's ones that, make me want to clean. There's ones that help me to focus. So, and I might not remember that. So that's what the app and the graphs also do, is like, say you're like, oh, I used that strain like 4 months ago and I'm pretty sure it was the one that helped me to be creative. It would have all of that stored. So it's kind of like it's a dosing app, it's a journal, and it's just really a personal guide um, for the user to like really create something that's individualized.
There's nothing
So yeah.
worse than saying, you know what, before I do the dishes, I'm gonna smoke this J. And then realizing this is not the J that's gonna make me do the dishes. This is the J that's gonna make me sit on my ass. And I make that mistake
Yeah.
every week. Maybe I'm just not gonna do the
Every
dishes, and I
week,
should
right?
accept that.
Yeah, so this is something that would be helpful for you then, because you could be like, oh, it was this Gorilla Glue, or it was this Blue Dream from this dispensary. And patients are also able to preload their products, which I think is really important, because we wanted to create something that could be used in any market. Um, so it's not just the products that are available in California, and it's not just the brands. It can be, what what you're growing, right? It can be what you're sharing with, your community. So, because that was also really important to me, was to not create something that was specifically designed for big cannabis brands.
Yeah, I love that.
So
How do you deal with the fact that like strains are not exactly the same everywhere you go?
yeah, no, you're totally right. Um, so, we have a lab testing to where you can kind of put in the lab testing. And then we have like to where you can choose like terpenes, because we all know indica and sativa really doesn't mean anything. It's morphology. Sativas are long and thin, indicas are short and fat, but the effects are really cannabinoids and terpenes. So that's kind of what we focus on, but not everybody has lab testing, right? Um, and for a lot of states, it's just cannabinoids. They're not necessarily testing for terpenes, but anyone in the cannabis space can tell you that terpenes are really what differentiate. If you roll with a bunch of terpene heads, I'm a total terpene head. Like, beta caryophyllene is hands down my favorite, followed by limonene. I can like instantly smell it. I know what it smells like. Um, and so that's kind of what we focus on too, is like for the people who don't have lab testing, you can do it based on aroma, although it's not as good. But here in my state, anybody can test their cannabis for terpenes for like $50. So I always recommend that if you find something that you love that's not tested by a dispensary that you're growing, then test it. So, but I don't know how other states are. I just know mine.
Yeah, no, that's cool. All right, so we got to wrap up here pretty soon. Can you tell us where to find the app? Because I think most of our people on the East Coast here. Tell us about where to find the app and anything coming up for you in the future, what you're working on.
Yeah, so we're like predominantly focused on the app, so it's gonna launch in the beginning of the year. We have a website. It's Aaliyah Cannabis. So Aliyah is actually the boats that the Polynesians, specifically Samoans, use to navigate the Pacific. So this is really like a tool for you to use on your cannabis journey, because your cannabis journey is constantly evolving. Like my
It's like
cannabis
your tech
journey has
app.
never been static. Right. It's constant, right? It's
Yep, yep.
evolving. It's always different, you know. Um and I think that our probably most up to date media is our TikTok. So we are Malie Cannabis at or wait, I lied. We got kicked off for being Malie Cannabis, so we are Malie Clinic on TikTok.
All right, we'll make sure to
We
put
got
something
shadow
like that.
banned.
Man, they're harsh. We've been dealing with that with Instagram for like the last couple months. Like, it's a cold world.
Ooh, Instagram's pulling everyone. They've pulled like half my people and put them back up. Yeah, no, social media is really, it's rough for the cannabis space.
You forget how dependent you are on these platforms. It's like the streets you drive
Yeah.
on, it's all good till the street doesn't let you, like, till they shut it down. You know what I mean? You take it for granted.
Right.
And it's
No, exactly.
it's not like it's publicly
Yeah.
funded. It's these businesses, they're not playing around.
Right. No,
Um
not at all.
Well, cool. It was really, really, really great to hear about your story starting both of these companies. I really find it inspirational because honestly, both companies are like very realistic for people to start. Like it wasn't like you went and got like
Mm.
$5 million to go open some new lab facility, right? Like it was very attainable, and you were able to leverage your family and like your close network to make that happen. Which, for the record, I don't think anybody's like extended family is as dope as yours, from what it sounds like. However, we can use the people in our networks and close to us to try to recreate some of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, like, just the cannabis community in general, it was them just as much as my family,
Mm.
that like put me on, like, Lulu bringing me to you guys, right? Things like that.
Oh, I totally see why you passed the Lulu vibe test. That's the most important test in cannabis. Like, screw terpenes and cannabinoids. It's the Lulu vibe test. If you pass that,
It's
you're all
the
good.
Lulu vibe test.
Yeah. That's a real thing in our Revel world. Like if you don't pass the Lulu vibe test,
Right?
peace. Peace.
Bye. Yeah, no, Lulu is amazing. I love you, sis. Thanks for bringing me here.
I love you too, May. I can't wait to maybe do a Revel event out in Honolulu at some point.
Ooh, let's
Maybe when,
go.
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Yes. I got venues, everything unlocked.
nice.
Anytime, let me know.
Nice.
Anyone who wants to do anything here, we're always happy to collaborate and to connect you with local, like local people who are doing, Hawaii is incredibly accepting, especially in the cannabis space. We have so many amazing people here. So yeah, we'd love to have you.
We
Oh,
should do this, Jacoby.
I'm doing it.
We
My
should do
roommate
this.
through college was Hawaiian, and he would always cook for us when we were drunk, and like all I want to do is go eat in Hawaii. Shout out to Mason.
Yes. Yes. Hi, Mason.
All right, guys. Well, it was a pleasure. Thank you for everybody that joins on YouTube, people that check out the podcast and any other platforms. Really was an honor to hear your story and your journey. So thank you for joining us so much earlier in your day, but it is the evening for us, and much love.
We love you, May.
Love you.
Have a beautiful rest of your
Aloha.
day. Aloha.
Aloha.